listening to Scribble Talk, a podcast for bid and proposal professionals. My name is Bhaskar Sundaram, and with my co-host,
Ashley Case,
we will be sitting down with our industry veterans to share their stories, discuss their career, and learn how to make an impact in the industry.
Today's guest is Mike Walsh. Mike, CF APMP, is the current chair of APMP. Concurrently, he leads the alumni and strategic business development efforts for EY's financial services organization. Mike has spent his entire time at EY in business development, starting more than 8 years ago as a Communications and Pursuit Strategist, then leading the Service Line Enablement team prior to taking his current role. He was first introduced to proposal management while at Odyssey Systems Consulting Group, a mid-sized defense contractor. His professional career began 24 years ago as an officer of the U.S. Coast Guard, and since then has taken a few twists and turns on its way to business development, including stints as a fire training captain for the State of New Hampshire, a middle and high school teacher, and a history teacher. Mike received a BS in government from the U.S. Coast Guard Academy and an MS in organizational leadership from Gonzaga University. He has been on the Nor'easter's board of directors since 2012 and served as the chair of the Nor'easter chapter from 2014 to 2019. Mike began APMP International board service in 2016, serving a 2-year term as director, and is currently in the middle of his 3-year term as vice chair, chair, and past chair. Welcome, Mike, to Scribble Talk. Great to have you with us.
Hi, guys. It's great to be here today.
So, Mike, we love to start in the beginnings. We're curious, where were you born? Where did you grow up, and where did you go to school?
Yeah, I was born in Quincy, Mass, which is where I grew up. It's just south of Boston. It's the town that both John Adams and John Quincy Adams came from. So that's their legacy is the city of presidents. Went to 12 years of Catholic school, 8 years Catholic grammar school, and then to a Jesuit high school, BC High, in Boston, just before heading down to the Coast Guard Academy for where I picked up my degree in college years, which is hardly a college, but more of an experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience at the Coast Guard Academy?
It really shaped a lot of kind of how I view things now. You build very strong relationships at the Coast Guard Academy because you're relying on the people around you. Like I said, it's not like any other college experience except for maybe one of the other service academies, because it doesn't have it's a lot more structured and rigid than a traditional college or university experience.
Mm-hmm.
But my summers were definitely some of the more exciting things we've ever, I've gotten to do. We sailed across the Atlantic on the tall ship, the Eagle, spent a summer in the Caribbean on a medium endurance cutter, and then spent a summer kind of bouncing around to all sorts of different training, from firefighting and damage control to teaching the new swabs, the incoming class, all of the stuff they needed to learn to survive. So it was a great experience. And, some of the friends that I have today are those that I made back in those days.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. So we talked a little bit in your introduction about some twists and turns in your career choices that led you finally to business and development. So your first job outside of the Coast Guard Academy?
I was briefly for about 9 months a production supervisor for a Johnson & Johnson company that made disposable neurosurgical devices. I was on second shift. I did that for like 9 months or so. It was kind of a traditional transition from the military, was to go military into some sort of operations management. So production supervision seemed like the way to go. But at the same time, I was also a volunteer firefighter in my local town. And like I said, about 9 months into that job, the position at the New Hampshire Fire Academy opened up to be a field training captain. And that was a great job. It was I got assigned a trailer and a Suburban, and coordinated training for fire departments in the southern half of the state of New Hampshire. So it was myself and another person with the job for the northern half, and we'd occasionally meet in the Lake Winnipesaukee area for breakfast to discuss what was going on. So it was a really great time and a fun couple of years.
Oh, very fascinating work and very important stuff, right?
Yeah, it's definitely good stuff, and it's, it kind of leveraged some of the training that I had in my time in the Coast Guard, and also kind of the love that I've always had for helping people and helping those in need, and working in incredibly stressful situations. So it's like I said, it was really enjoyable, and getting to drive around in a red Suburban didn't stink either.
Yeah, absolutely. So you took a few other kind of twists and turns and finally ended up in the proposal field?
Yeah, I kind of like, and I hate to say this, and I hope someday soon, and I know my vice chair Kristen Maycumber is working on making sure this doesn't happen as often in the future. But like so many, I kind of fell into this by accident. I think, like we've talked about twists and turns. I was a middle school and high school history and English teacher, which was challenging, and I feel like if you can convince middle and high school students that history is important, you can sell pretty much anything and convince anyone of almost anything.
Yes.
So that was definitely one of the bumps. And then after that, I joined a mortgage company right about the height of the roller coaster that was the mortgage crash of the 2000s. And went through one of their management training programs, ultimately getting to be an administrator in that program on the East Coast. So coordinated that program for a couple of years before the mortgage industry kind of went by the wayside. But that was, again, I kind of look at everything happens for a reason. That brought me to Odyssey Systems. I went in there as a training manager and worked as a training manager for a few years. And they ran a couple of proposals that had a training component, and I'll never forget it. The CEO called me into his office, and again, it was a smaller company, so this happened in companies like that. And he said, have you ever thought about being a proposal manager? And I said, I don't know, what is that? So he gave me a couple of the APMP journals that were still printed in magazine form back then. Read about it, talked about it, and and he said, yeah, I think you'd be decent. I think you'd be pretty good at it. So, that was kind of how I got my start. I made sure that I would get the job because I didn't want to tick off my current boss, who was the human resources director. And he was like, I'm the CEO. I'm asking you to become this. So I think you're all set with getting the job. And that was kind of how I got my start in proposals, and kind of haven't looked back since.
Is that when you took your role at EY?
Yeah, I did proposals for Odyssey Systems for a few years, and then I think, was it 2012? 2012, I think, or 11. I can't recall now. It was whatever 8.5 years ago was. So I think that would have been 2011, I guess. I took a job with EY, and I was really lucky. I was interviewing with Melissa DeMeo, who's a former APMP International board member, and I talked to the recruiter first, the EY internal recruiter, and they said, well, we don't think we have anything for you because the role that I was looking at was in the financial services organization, but do you have any interest in going down and working for our government and public sector practice, which is based out of DC? And everything I have is up in the Northeast, so I was like, I'm not really in a position to move. And he said, well, we'll see what happens. And Melissa is one of those folks that really understands proposals, and she understands that having the proposal management skill set is more important than having the subject matter knowledge. So she took a chance on me, and it's I've been here ever since, and have worked for Melissa ever since. So it's been a great run so far, and really happy that she took that chance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And a long stint, so it sounds like things are going well. Can you tell us a little bit about how your role at EY has evolved over the years?
Yeah, I spent the first 4 years at EY as a, what they call the CAPS, a Communication and Pursuit Strategist. It's what we call a proposal manager. Really focused on kind of all parts of the proposal piece, from the writing to the managing to the editing to the production to getting it out the door. And about 4 or 5 years into that, a role opened up on what they call the Service Line Enablement team. And that's the team that does the business development operations for the 4 service lines. EY, like most of the big 4 consulting firms, are broken up into service lines of tax, assurance, which is the audit practice, transactions, and then the consulting practice. So I led a team of I think it was 6-7 people at the time. that provided support to the various service lines from a business development perspective. So that included involvement in the pursuits and pursuit strategy, but also looking more at the pipeline and understanding how the whole business of the business runs and the business of business development runs. And then most recently, last September, I was asked to take on the role of the financial services organization alumni leader, which is, we have a great outreach program for former Ernst & Young employees or UI employees that are currently at other spots. You know, and as most know, relationships are really key, and you don't even get the invite to many proposals or pursuits if you don't have relationships. So we like to maintain solid relationships with our former employees that are going on to do different things. You know, and the alumni leader role is to provide opportunities for networking, for personal growth and development, and then just also just keep those relationships fresh, so that, you know, if our employees or if our former employees or alumni need anything, we're there to help. And if we need to ask questions or are hopefully trying to identify people that we can talk to, you know, we can leverage that network. So that's been an exciting shift and a different view of the business than I have had for the last, you know, 8 years or so.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a pretty cool program, and something kind of unique. You don't always see that in organizations.
Now there are some of the bigger consulting firms, you know, focus on these. You know, if firms like UI have people that come in and go, and depending on where they are in their careers. So it's, and often they go on to great roles, and we have a lot of programs that are there to help folks move into their next role, you know, and typically they're rolling into C-suite type roles or board roles or you know, whatever's next in their career. So it's a great program to kind of keep in touch and keep people front of mind.
Yeah, very cool stuff. So before we dig a little bit more into your career and some APMP stuff, can you tell us 3 things that not many people know about you?
Sure. I can tell you one that I know my dad knows about me is that I am terrified of heights, which is definitely a challenge when you're both sailing a tall ship and teaching people about firefighting. So it's one where you really have to kind of buckle your fears down and get the job done. So that's one that not a lot of folks know. Another thing is that I've gone swimming in the ocean when it was 4 miles deep. So that was kind of an exciting experience. We were coming across the Atlantic Ocean, and they basically stopped the sailboat, and the Eagle, they put the sails down, and we just kind of drifted around and got to swim, and the depth sounder or the fathometer read that we were in about 4 miles deep of water. So that's kind of a humbling experience to feel like, wow, it's a long way underneath the 6 or so feet that I'm maintaining in the top of the water.
Yeah.
And then I guess the last thing is I don't want to say terrified, because the heights thing is terrified, but I'm not really comfortable working and meeting with new people, which I think a lot of people will be surprised about. You know, I am much more comfortable in situations where I know people, and like that walking into the crowded room of people you don't know is one of those things that's definitely a challenging experience, you know, and one that I always continue to and I'm still trying to work through. And you know, and I think like many things, you know, bravery is not the absence of fear, but it's doing things that you're afraid of. So that's kind of one of those things that I don't love necessarily doing. I'm not very comfortable at it, and yet, you know, just continue to try and force myself to do it and talk to people. And I think part of it stems from I'm not great at making small talk. So that's the fear of like silence, I think, is probably more terrifying than the fear of, you know, not talking to people or whatever. So there you go. There's 3 things that I don't think a lot of people know about me, and a couple that people might be surprised about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, my experiences, seeing you engage at conferences and whatnot, I would have never guessed that, you know, you have any discomfort, you know, walking into a room where you don't know everyone there. So you're doing a great job.
Well, thanks.
So let's dig into APMP a little bit.
Yep.
When did you become an APMP member?
Yeah, I think I first signed up in 2011. So it was probably the 2 years before I left Odyssey and came over to EY.
Okay.
And that was the first time I like I said, once I rolled into the role, I was really excited to find out that there was an association, that put on these periodicals that I was given to read to understand what the heck this job was, and kind of start learning about best practices and how to do this job that I was just kind of figuring out. So.
Yeah, very cool. So do you remember your first time attending an APMP conference?
I do. It was the conference in Atlanta. And it was kind of one of those, you want to talk about an overwhelming experience for someone who doesn't like going to a place where he doesn't know a lot of people. I think I knew, maybe 3 or 4 people from the Nor'easters chapter that were there. And that was kind of an overwhelming experience. But I remember, a lot of things, and just trying to really break through that discomfort and talk to the people that were around me at the various workshops but it was a great time. It was kind of like the first time you'd ever been with a group of people and you're like, hey, I totally fit in with this crowd, and every single person understands what I'm talking about when I use these weird acronyms and phrases that everybody else looks at me crazy like. So
yeah, right. I think all of us can really relate to that first experience and having that kind of aha moment.
Exactly.
So when did you become associated with the Nor'easters chapter?
I joined the Nor'easters chapter. Obviously, I affiliated with them when I signed up, and then I think probably about 2012, Suzanne Jones brought me onto the board as their strategic programs director. So that was really my first taste at what the boards were like, and it was one of those things like once I had gotten involved with APMP, I knew I wanted to get involved more, and was kind of constantly harping her for how do I get involved and what kind of things can we do. And so that's, I think it was 2012 was when I first got brought on to the board, and it was just a phenomenal experience. As you can tell, I didn't want to leave until about 7 years later. So it was a great run there.
Yeah, it sounds like a great chapter. And then you went on to become a board member of, APMP International. Can you tell us a little bit about your time there?
Yeah, again, it was another great experience. It was one that I talked to Melissa DeMayo, my boss, a lot about because she was an international board member. And by then had made some friends through the chapter liaison committee and with other chapter leaders that had either been in the role or been on the board. And I kind of knew that I just wanted to get more involved and see what kind of things we could do to help continue to grow and build the organization. And that kind of seemed like the next logical step. And it was a great couple of years. I served under Kristen Dufresne was, I think, the chair my first year. And then Jamie Ninneman, my second year on the board. And, they really learned a lot from both of them. The board really has transformed over the past, I'd say 5 or 6 years and is really getting to do a lot of work in their committees and really doing some great things to kind of look beyond the getting, just driving the year and really looking into the future of APMP. And that's kind of really what I think the board focus should be on. It's manage the year, but really plan for the next 5 years or for 5 years down the road. We're putting things in place and trying to work through things now that I think are going to make APMP successful, 5 or 10 years from now.
Yeah, no, it's amazing stuff that you guys are doing. As part of this kind of experience, something you could have never predicted was taking this leadership role during the pandemic.
There's the understatement of the year, I think. Right. I couldn't have even predicted this when I started the role in January, and unpredictable is the understatement, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Can you share a little bit with us about kind of that journey and some of the things that you guys have been doing and maybe some of the plans for, continuing to cope for the remaining of the year?
Yeah, so I think, like most chairs, I think, you win the election for vice chair, and vice chair is kind of the year that you learn what goes on, because there's the things that goes on at the board level, and then there are things that go on even at the executive committee level, which is the vice chair, the chair, in the past chair, along with the treasurer and Rick. And that kind of is like the first filter for things. Should this go to the board? Should this be something that's handled by the staff? And where any of like the really kind of initial conversations happen. So, that was a great learning year, and Ginny Carson was phenomenal chair to work with as a vice chair. We met monthly. She was really phenomenal at being super transparent in things that were going on, and really made me feel like I was well prepared for the year. And to say that she came off like a banner year, everything was off the charts. And so like, it was weird that it hit like New Year's Day. I remember sitting with my family and I was like, oh my God, I'm now the chair of this association. And really, I was just like, please just don't screw it up. That's the whole goal. Like this association is running on the right track. Just keep it on the right track. And maybe we'll have a couple things that we champion and that'll be great, but just don't screw it up. And so then I think it was January, Rick flew up to Boston, and we had a nice, half-day session where we kind of outlined some things that we really wanted to push as far as the agenda goes. One of the things that I had been working on during my year as vice chair was this adjacent roles committee, where we are looking at the roles that immediately surround proposal management. We kind of look at it like, we're not shooting for the stars, but we're looking at if proposal management's the kitchen, then the adjacent roles are looking at the living room, the pantry. We're not going to the attic, we're not going out to the shed, but we're looking for those things that, feed right into it. And APMP had already been starting down that path with the capture certification, and we just kind of looked at it, and we're looking at things like our retention rate, which, is about the same as the association average. And part of the things that I think we're hitting that personally, where, I myself had moved into a couple of different roles since being a strict proposal manager, and yet stayed with the association, and was feeling like there were some people that as soon as they moved into one of these adjacent roles, they kind of might have felt that APMP didn't have anything to offer. So we were kind of that was one of the things that we were looking at, and all of that we were trying to kind of pull together and made these plans. And as soon as you make some plans, the world decides to throw a giant curveball at you.
Right.
And that curveball came right before BPC Europe. So EY and other major firms had already stopped international travel. I had remember chatting with Rick and saying, I think we got to keep an eye on this thing, and he was like, I don't know that it's that bad. It seems all right, because he was already in Europe. And, the benefit of being with a firm like EY is we have people everywhere. So we have had people in China, had people in Europe where they were starting to see these hotspots. And, the firm was taking steps, and, and it was kind of one of those, maybe we should keep an eye on it. And so we were very lucky. We had a very successful BPC Europe. We had a couple hundred people. We had about 60 cancellations that came that week, because again, it was exactly the week that the pandemic really started to erupt. But I had in the back of my mind, like, please don't let this be an epicenter. Like, I didn't want to see like 200 people tracing their virus spreading to this one conference. And so thankfully we got through that one, and really have been, I think I've talked to Rick almost more than I've talked to my wife in the last 4 to 5 months, simply because of this. It's kind of been one thing after another. It was the initial, oh, all right, we made it through that. Now we need to look at Nashville. And then, I don't know if Nashville's going to happen. And then we've got Nashville postponed because the CDC said you can't travel and have more than, 50 people in a room or whatever it was at the time. So we were able to get Nashville pushed out to October. And now we're kind of like, all right, is October far enough, as we're watching these second waves. And, we're just kind of trying to manage the crisis as we get new information, and I can remember talking to Rick saying a couple things, a few things we need to do is we need to really ramp up our webinars. If we do one a week, that'll be great, because we knew that the big value of APMP was the in-person meetings, and those weren't going to happen. Even at the chapter level, at the local level, folks just aren't able to get together. so let's kind of take control of the bus. So we pushed this, out. Membership has continued to hold steady, and we just had our 10,000th member award show, which was a lot of fun to do. We've been doing a lot of just creative ways to do things. We had the week of winners when BPC Nashville was supposed to happen, and that was some of the idea that came out of the staff. And really, I can't applaud the APMP staff enough, for how much work they've done and how many different things they've put into this. And, Peter Frank had been researching, once we pushed out Nashville, he was looking into software to see what would be possible to do something online, and at that point, a couple of weeks later, I talked to Rick and we talked about the winning business virtual experience and how we need to do something, because we're not sure what the future is going to hold. So let's see what we can host this summer. And he was like, it's funny you should mention this. Peter's already been doing the research. So he was already, kind of thinking down that path. We were trying to do something because we hit the 10,000 members. We wanted to do something, to really just give a shot in the arm to our membership. We pulled this together, and it's even, I'm sure you guys have been watching the post, but it's expanded past our wildest dreams as to how many people are involved in this, how we get, I think it's 38 or 32 hours of straight content. It's going to be running nonstop with original content in every time zone throughout the world. And, it's going to be all sorts of different, some bite-sized 10 to 15-minute chunks, some more traditional keynote level, 60-minute chunks. And it's really going to be an exciting experience, and one that I think the membership will be excited about. I know I'm personally excited about it, and like I said, this is all because of the thinking, the forethought, and then the hard work that the APMP staff has put in. And I can help guide and think, but those are the folks that are actually making APMP still as successful in the middle of this pandemic as it is.
You talked a little bit about, the excitement surrounding the 10,000 member milestone, and now we're marching towards the 20,000 member milestone. Are there any things you guys are doing in particular to kind of boost membership and encourage people to join APMP?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that we, and I'll give a little preview and not too much, because this is going to roll out during the Winning Business Virtual Experience. But the Adjacent Roles Committee that I've been working with have put together a winning business ecosystem, and it's it's amazing. I think it's one of the kind of a really a signature piece that APMP is producing, and I think that along with now looking at what roles we can, which of these adjacent roles we can kind of provide the programming for, to either encourage them to stay or to join if they're not currently members. That's going to be, I think, key to our growth in the next few years, and I think it's going to lead to a little bit of an explosion in growth. I think Ginny once had a great line that came from one of her mentors: that first keep what you got, and then go after more. And that's kind of the sales mentality. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping the folks that are our current members. And really the only reason I'd want to see someone leave APMP is if they have retired and don't want anything to do with proposals anymore and are going to go fly fishing or whatever folks do in retirement. Or if they've just totally decided to leave the winning business or bids and proposals and pursuits industry altogether and go do something totally different. But for everyone else who might move into a different role, whether it's, managing relationships or doing capture on the front end or whatever the case may be, I'd like to see in a few years that APMP, is the home for all of those folks. And I think that's going to be key to the growth to that 20,000 and beyond number.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like there are some exciting initiatives up ahead.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. And I think the other parts, we've had some great success with the practitioner and the capture practitioner certifications with the sales and the promotions that we've run these last couple of months, and those things are also things that kind of will help retain members, because to maintain your certifications, you now need to maintain your CEUs. And those CEUs are not impossible to maintain, but they definitely, there's a requirement there. So, and that's something that in the past, I think hasn't been looked at as strictly, and that was something that kind of came up about about 2 years ago or so is, let's kind of give people a grace period to get caught up, and then let's start tracking those CEUs a little bit more in depth. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And really maintaining those CEUs is what keeps us, current with the industry and up with the trends, and, making sure that our skills are staying strong.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just been such a period of change, and I look back and I can remember going to bid and proposal cons and, learning about, maybe there might be one person talking about managing a virtual team. And now here we are. If we're on any team, it's virtual, even if we're all in the same town these days. So,
yeah,
and you hit it right on the head. Those CEUs are what keep us current with, best practices, what's keeping us current with what's going on in the industry, with technology. And it's all, everything that used to kind of be its own individual path is now just kind of merging into one large piece. You can't really do proposal work without technology anymore. Whereas, 10 years ago, there was like a whole technology track. And if you weren't interested in it, you could go back to putting Post-it notes on the wall of the war room. And now the technology is just all there. And I don't think technology ever replaces, the proposal manager, because again, it's just another tool, but it's now a tool that is integral into the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wouldn't be able to get through this pandemic without those technologies. So thank goodness we've been tracking those.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I think that's a great transition over to our more lighthearted surprise rapid fire questions round.
Nice.
Mike, let's start with the fire safety. Mike, how did you manage, Mike? Because you mentioned that you had fear of heights. I think I do as well. But you're working in fire safety. Did you had any experience of trying to put out in a tall building or anything? How did you cope with that, Mike?
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, and I often say it's fear of heights. It's actually not the heights. It's the sudden impact with the ground that terrifies me. So a lot of it is just convincing yourself, like, one, you're not going to let go, and two, you just, I don't know whether it's adrenaline or what, but it's one of those things that I'm not going to climb a 100-foot ladder just because that's something to do. And I have many friends that would love nothing more than to climb up a 100-foot ladder. But it's a matter of just, putting your mind to it and saying, you know what, I'm not going to let go. I'm not going to fall. I'm just going to get to the top. And you get there and you just kind of focus on the task at hand. So I think it's kind of almost staying in the present and getting out of your own head that's the challenging part. But again, it's also one of those things that if you think about it too long, you could just freeze up. So you just try to focus on what the task is at hand.
Was there any memorable experience where it really tested your resilience?
Yeah, I think that was in the Coast Guard when I was on the Eagle. The first thing you have to do are these things called up and over drills. So there are, I think five what they call yard arms, and those are the braces that go across the mast that hold the 5 sails. And you had to go up and over the first one. So that was the first test. Actually, I guess that was the second test. The first test, and the one that I joked about my dad saying that he knows about my fear of height, was the rope climb as part of the obstacle course at the Coast Guard Academy. Because when my dad saw that, he's like, well, we'll see you home in a week. So getting up there was the first test, and then getting over that first platform. And then ultimately, in rough weather, climbing up into the sails to, move sails around it and do what you had to do. And you're standing on a 1-inch wire rope as you shimmy out the side of these yard arms to kind of pull up sails and whatnot in tough weather. Those were some of the things that really tested the resilience, because ladders up against a building typically don't move, but these rope ladders that you're climbing on the side of a ship that are bouncing back and forth, they definitely make you test your mettle.
Definitely, Mike. And what, I get freaked out when my foot doesn't touch the floor wherever I swim.
Fair enough.
Oh my dear, Mike, that is impossible for me. So how was that experience? What tip would you give someone who is ocean swimming, Mike?
Honestly, it's not much different than swimming in a pool, other than just don't think about what might be underneath you. And I guess the funny part or the good part is when you're that far out in the ocean, there aren't many there isn't much marine life out there because there's nothing to eat. Everything kind of works through the food chain. So the seaweed grows in shallow water, so the small fish kind of hang out in shallow. I use that term loosely. It's usually a couple 100 miles out to sea. Is still shallow by fish standards, but when you're out there with 4 miles of water beneath you, there's not a heck of a lot living there. So that the biggest fear of bumping into something unusual is not really there. So just other than that, if you're not a great swimmer, make sure you have your life jacket on. But other than that, it's kind of a lot of fun and a great experience.
And being a middle school teacher, Mike, any tips to
yeah, don't. Being a middle school teacher was challenging because middle school kids are the ones that don't really. They can be very challenging, judgmental. They're tough crowds to win over. Because it's not the best age. I remember being in middle school. It's not the best time. You're going through a lot of changes. You're trying to figure out who you are, and then there's this other person. But I have to say it was a phenomenal experience. I loved teaching those kids. I took them down to. I was a substitute teacher for my first year and ended up taking them down to DC for a field trip, which was a very crazy couple of 3 days, but it was a great experience. And really it is an awful lot like what we do in proposal management. You got to figure out what the win themes are, what's going to resonate, how you're going to convince folks that they need to quote unquote buy your product. And in this case it's learn history or learn the English that you're teaching. So it really is it's not much different from what we do in proposal management. And often the phrase in proposal management is herding cats. And I think that seriously applies to a classroom of 23 middle school students too.
Exactly, Mike. I can't even manage. My eldest was 9 and my youngest,
I do know. It's sometimes easier to manage other people's kids in a group though than it is to manage your own. I can say that much.
So true, Mike. Yeah, maybe we can swap at some point, Mike. Any plans to coming to UK, Mike?
I would love to get there as soon as we can travel. I don't know that the UK is going to let anyone from the United States in anytime soon, but eventually this pandemic will end. It will run its course, and we'll either have a vaccine or we'll have God forbid everybody that is going to get infected, and it'll eventually die out. But it would be great to get to the UK once we can travel safely again.
Mike, I do notice, Mike, in your signature, there are some interesting leadership quotes. From when did you start to add those signature, Matt? And what's your favorite quotes?
Yeah, I kind of have added them. I think I probably saw someone who had an inspirational quote, and I've had a couple of different ones. Kind of started with my greeting of do great things, and then had bounced back to be outstanding. And then I had a quote from John Quincy Adams about leadership, and really just kind of every I don't know 6 to 8 months I'll kind of come across something that it'll inspire me, and I hope that it'll have that impact on others. So I kind of like to throw them in there. And John Wooden's quote goes back when I was in that management training program for the mortgage company. The person who was the overall leader of that program had us reading They Call Me Coach by John Wooden, because he was just such an inspirational leader. So I kind of circled back to that, and then I guess the current one about was a leader or character and strategy. But if you have to choose one, only pick character. Just kind of seems to be. It really speaks to me with everything that's going on in the world today. So
100%. I do like emailing you just to get back the quote.
Well, I'll try and mix them up periodically a little bit more so that they're interesting.
Oh, that's so nice, Mike. Mike, in addition to this, what are your hobbies and interests, Mike?
Yeah, I do a lot of model railroading. So I have a setup in my basement. Nothing like David Bowles, who won the best home office contest that we ran. But it's kind of a way to just get away and break free from everything else and just kind of focus on something that doesn't really matter. So that's kind of nice. I don't get to do it as much as I like, and it's definitely more of a winter hobby than a summer hobby, because once it's nice out, I don't like to spend that much time inside. And then I like to take bike rides, especially with the family. It's just a nice way to get outside, enjoy the fresh air. We have a lot of rail trails and former, kind of unpaved parts of parks that they've kind of made some bike trails around here. So it's kind of just, those are a couple of things I like to do to just break up things that are going on. And biking has really been something that we've been doing a lot of this spring with, not being able to get out of the house much and go places. It's a nice way to get out and around. And as we found when we got new bikes for my kids, so is everybody else, because coming by a bike these days in the Northeast US is not easy.
Yes, definitely. That's great, Mike. I think that I hope with this lockdown, you managed to go back to your hobbies and try to do more than what you used to do.
A little bit. It's definitely, I think the lockdown has definitely made it interesting, and I don't know how others are finding it, because like that work-life balance is much more blurred than it I think ever was in the past. Because with everybody working from home, it's almost harder to separate. And yet I almost think it's better. So you're kind of managing your whole day, and hopefully you're not spending the entire day working. But it's allowed me to, if I want to take an hour or two off in the middle of the day and go for a bike ride with the kids, I can do that because I'm home, I'm with them, and then I can just pick up the hour or two later in the day when they're having their time with technology or whatever. And so it's definitely blurred those lines of when you're working versus when you're not working. But it's also, I think, made it so that you can almost manage the I think I had a guy, Ed Smith, that I worked with once, said you kind of, at this point in your life, you need to manage the week, not manage the day. So if you need to do something, go to a kid's baseball game or whatever, you do that, you pencil that into your calendar, and then you just work around it, and you make sure that you're doing the things that you need to do for your job, but you're also doing the things that you need to do for your family. And it's not so much I'm just going to work till 5 p.m., and that's never a thing in proposal management, but it's also, I think, important to schedule in those things that are important to you, and know that it is okay as a proposal person, or as anyone in business development for that matter. It's okay to have a life outside of business development. And while you may have to do dinners and things that take you away from your family later in the afternoon or later in the evening, that you can kind of offset that by going to things that you might not have been able to go to, earlier in the day. Take an hour to go to a parent-teacher conference, or see a play at school, or whatever the case may be. You just kind of got to look at the whole week holistically, and less so about the hours, and it all seems to work out.
That's brilliantly said, Mike, and 100% I'd agree with you. Mike, let's officially start the random now, right? Mike, what's the nickname that your friends have given you, and what does it mean?
I think it's really if there are any derogatory ones, I haven't heard them. But Walshy is pretty much the nickname I had growing up. It's kind of what, if I've ever gotten a nickname other than just the shortening, Mike, they just tack in IE or a W or a Y, depending on how they spell it on the back of my last name. And that's kind of, it's what I was known as when I was playing sports growing up. So, because there's always more than one Mike. So you need to have something. So whoever was there first gets the Mike name, and then everybody else has to have some version of either their last name or a nickname. So mine's always been Walshy.
Got you, Mike. And do you play any sports, Mike, during the university days or now?
I grew up and played baseball until high school, and then sailed in high school and for a little bit in college. But now don't just play catch with my son, or bike rides with my son and daughter. My sons and daughters is kind of what I'm doing these days.
Got you, Mike. Mike, who's the first person you call when you're in trouble?
Probably, well, it depends. It's either my mom or my dad, depending on the type of trouble. And if it's something that, if it's something that I think I'll need my dad's help for, I'll probably call my mom to figure out how to do that. And if it's something that I think my mom might not be able to handle, I call my dad first for that. So
that's beautiful. 100%. Mike, why do superheroes wear their underwear outside of their clothes?
Because they put on those tights, and tights with underwear under them, I guess, feel weird.
That's it. Mike, what's an ideal weekend for you?
An ideal weekend is not having anything due Monday morning. And then you get to actually enjoy the weekend.
Beautifully said, Mike. You're so right. You're so right on that one. Mike, you just won an all-expense-paid trip to anywhere in the world, but you can only go if you take 3 of the people you dislike the most with you. Who are they, and where are you going?
Wow, there's a question out of left field. 3 of the people I dislike the most.
You don't need to name them, Mike.
Well, I think our current commander-in-chief ranks pretty high on that list. It's probably him. It's probably Putin, and it's probably whoever's leading the Taliban right now. And any place that has a volcanic cliff that we could maybe launch some of them off would be. Probably won't win any favors for some of the listeners, but there you have it.
That's brilliant, right? Brilliant. Mike, I always have this question. If someone owns a piece of land, how deep does their ownership go? Do they own it all the way to the center of the earth?
Yeah, I think they do, because that's when the person on the other side of the earth owns their land too. So I think that's where it intersects.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So what's on your bucket list for this year?
For this year, I don't know. I don't know that I want to go eating at a restaurant inside right now. Although that would be one of those things that I look forward to. My wife and I and our kids just went to an outdoor restaurant, and it was the first time we had eaten out in 4 months or whatever, and that was super exciting. And so for this year, goodness, I think surviving it and staying sane, as I don't really have a lot of confidence that this epidemic is going to be over by the end of the year. So I think just getting to the end of the year and ultimately seeing a vaccine or something that we can start to get back to where we are interacting with other people again on a more regular basis is what I was probably high on my bucket list for this year.
Oh, well said, Mike. I think that's in everyone's bucket list. Unfortunately,
I think so.
I turned 40 this year, so I had plans of traveling to 40 places over the whole year.
Oh, man.
I think most probably I'll do that virtually. Just look at a picture and say, wow.
Fair enough.
That's it. Mike, if a genie granted you 3 wishes, what wishes would you ask the genie?
I think the first one would be to eradicate this virus so that we can again get back to seeing people. 2 would be an all expenses paid trip to someplace warm and sunny with my entire family and not the 3 people that I dislike the most. And I guess the third would be enough money to do what I want for the rest of my life, as opposed to feel like you have to work just to get by.
Mike, if you could eat only 3 foods for the rest of your life, what food would you choose?
I would choose pizza, I would choose roast beef, and I would choose mashed potatoes.
That's brilliant. Balance. Balance. Name one thing that drives you angry.
One thing that drives me angry. I think the phrase fake news. Like, I'm tired of people not liking what they're hearing and then just and this is on both sides of any argument. If people don't like what they're hearing, they just say it's fake or they call it a hoax or whatever. And, that's just kind of been the response. And that really is, you don't have to like it, but you definitely can't just discount it.
Superb, Mike. Well said. Mike, what Hollywood movie character would you like to play?
I would say Maverick from Top Gun. I've always wanted to fly. And back when I had dreams of going in the military and doing that, I was deeply saddened when I found out that you needed perfect vision to do that. So I think that'd be a great movie character to play.
That's good, Mike. If you could replace all the grass in the world with something else, what would it be and why?
All the grass in the world, huh? I think solar panels. Because we need to figure out some sustainable energy source. And if we're getting rid of the grass, which we now don't need to mow, then maybe solar panels would be useful.
That's beautiful. What's something of sentimental value to you?
I have a silver dollar that I received from a person at the Coast Guard Academy. His name was Chuck Bell. And it was one of the traditions when you graduate or become an officer in the military is you give a silver dollar to the first person who salutes you, and this was a legitimate silver dollar. So that's something that I've had for 26 years now.
That's great, Mike. And Mike, what one trait you like the most about yourself?
I think I stay pretty calm in pressure-filled situations. And I think that's something that serves me well, in a lot of situations. I was in high school, I was a lifeguard during my time in the Coast Guard, during my time at the Fire Academy, and heck, even now in the middle of trying to figure out a lot of this COVID stuff. And yet, and very much so during my time, leading proposals.
Yes, 100%. You're made for this career. You've been built up towards it, I think. Fire safety, the academy, the teacher. You know what? Nothing more. Proposals should be fairly easy for you, Mike.
I think there are an awful lot of the similar skill sets that are needed, ironically. The ability to stay calm under pressure, the ability to have deadlines and things hanging over your head, to work with teams, all of those things kind of work well with the fire safety, being in the military, all of that I think are definitely traits that you learn or you gain experience in those careers and definitely lead you to be a successful proposal professional.
Who are the people who have been the most influential in your life and career?
Yeah, I think, in my life, I'd say my parents, they both had an amazing work ethic. I don't ever remember them taking sick days or anything. They just kind of put their heads down and did what they had to do. I like to thank, Mike Sweat, who is the CEO at Odyssey Systems, who gave me the first kind of opportunity to be a proposal manager. Ken Gaudreau was the leader of the management training program at Accredited Homelanders, and he, brought me into that program and then kind of elevated me to be an administrator of the program. And he was the one who leveraged a lot of the leadership that in his teachings throughout the program that I really look back on to this day. And then in my current role, Melissa DeMeo for giving me the opportunity, and then always encouraging involvement in APMP and being incredibly supportive. And, I wouldn't have been on the international board had it not been for her encouragement. I wouldn't be the chair today without her encouragement. So I think all those folks have been very influential.
Do you have any warm memories of working alongside Rick?
Yeah, I have come to know Rick probably better than even other chairs have had, because I can remember sitting back in January trying to figure out, like, what should be our cadence that we talk to each other. Maybe we should set something up every other week just to make sure that we're touching base. And I mean, come March, we've been on the phone, like I said, all the time. And he like me is definitely focused on getting through this and doing the best for our members. He is 100% focused on this association, and it's I think you dispelled one of the rumors that he was leaving when he hit 10,000. I don't know where that came from, but he is definitely committed for the long haul. He loves his job, really, and is really good at it. He does a ton of stuff you don't see, and folks that are even in leadership roles at the chapter don't see the hard work that he puts into this. So, just getting to know him and getting to kind of have a much different relationship than I had with him even, 2 years ago when I was just serving on the board has been really endearing and something that I'll cherish from this time.
Definitely, man. I do remember the words just like that, Mike. You just mentioned that Rick gives his blood to the organization. I mean, like, that was super powerful, though.
Yeah, no, he really does. He is 100% involved. I get, he'll respond to emails at all hours. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to him this morning and said, listen, unless I say it's really urgent, don't feel like you need to respond immediately, and he just is, he's always on and is just, a great guy that always has the association's best interest in mind.
100%, 100%. Mike, as you rightly said, we are in this COVID crisis and we are seeing so many good stuff happening around us. What have you observed lately that reminded you that people are good?
I mean, I think just the number of people that are standing up and doing the right thing, and there are folks that, could very easily take a back seat, and kind of hide, but they're stepping up and they're helping their neighbors get food, and they're helping their folks with children kind of take the time to educate their children and adjust their work schedule, and it's just that level of understanding that says, what, even in spite of this global pandemic, whether you agree with it or not, or think it's a hoax or not, or, people are just, for the most part, stepping up to do the right thing, and the folks that are going to work every day in hospitals and are providing comfort to those who are dying without their family members around, and just being that personal touch and that humanity, all of that kind of coupled together is just, it's what defines us as humans, and it's not the folks that are trying to, push discord and divisiveness, but it's the folks that are bringing us all together. That's what makes me think that people are still good.
And who is the kindest person you know?
I'd have to say it's probably Bruce Farrell. He's one in a million. I've come to know Bruce through APMP, and he is definitely a heck of a lot nicer than I'll ever be, than I could ever even aspire to be. He's just a really great person that's always looking out for everybody else.
Wow, that's actually a surprise answer, Mike, because normally people say their mom, their wife, maybe, for you. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, that's great. I'm sure he would be happy, super happy with this. Mike, what's the biggest lesson life has taught you so far?
Never give up. I think life throws a lot of punches at you. I think one of the things I gave an Ignite talk a couple of years back, I think it was Seattle, on failure, because I have failed more times than I care to talk about, although I did talk about it a little bit there. But you just can't give up. You just got to keep moving forward, put your head down, and life's full of failures. And if you let them get you down, then you're just kind of going to be stuck, and you just need to keep moving forward.
That's brilliant. And what's the one kind or memorable thing someone did to you recently?
Man, that's a tough one. Let's see, kind of memorable thing someone did to me recently.
Or maybe a few years ago, or maybe.
Yeah, no, there's been a lot, so it's tough to, I think, narrow it down, and I think, I look at, I look at just my wife being incredibly supportive of all that I do with APMP and being able to take off for a week almost every year except for this one to go to a conference, and that kind of thing. I think that's probably the kindest and nicest thing that anyone can do is, like, she's incredibly supportive of the times when my role, whether it be with APMP or work, have to pull me away from the family. And she takes on all that with very little, other support, to kind of just keep everything going while I'm gone. So.
Wow. Mike, I think you better say that, because I'm sure your wife would listen to this. I'm sure she'll be looking at you. What was the kindest person, Thank you, Mike. Thank you for this. A few more questions from Ashley, Mike.
Awesome.
All right. So, Mike, it's been amazing learning about your journey and the different steps that took you to where you are in your career today. Looking back, what's one thing you wish you had known when you set off and began your career?
This is kind of a weird one. So I got out of the Coast Guard in July of 2001, which was 3.5 months before 9/11. I wish I knew that was going to happen. I think I would have stayed into the Coast Guard. It was definitely a weird time because, I had just left a spot where I was able to respond. And ironically, the ship that I was first stationed on was the first ship into New York after that happened. So that was a period where you just felt incredibly helpless, and I had wished that I had stayed in, because to do something or to do anything would have felt better than doing nothing. So that's one thing I guess I wish I knew.
Oh, yeah, I can't even imagine, starting off my career at that point in time and having just left that ship that was one of the first responders. Just a kind of a surreal moment.
Yeah, it was definitely surreal.
So you mentioned some advice that Jenny had given you that has stuck with you. What is the best piece of advice other than that, that someone has given you, and who gave it to you?
Yeah, I think it would be from my dad, and it was always listen to someone if they're trying to teach you something, even if you already know it. Because if you spend the time to listen to them, it might take 5 minutes, 10 minutes to listen to something that you already know, but you'll have gained their trust and appreciation. However, if someone tries to teach you something and you say, yeah, I already know that, you've pretty much shut that door forever. And and they'll never try and teach you something else ever again.
Oh, wow. That is great advice, and something that I think sometimes we don't even think about.
No, I think that's totally, totally true. And in his context was when I was going into the military and, understanding that even the most junior, newest service member has something to teach you. And don't ever get too big for your own britches, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's a great one. And I'm definitely gonna, keep that with me moving forward for sure. So on a similar vein, what advice would you give someone wanting to pursue a proposal career or a career maybe similar to yours?
I would say don't follow a career similar to mine. It's too complicated to explain at cocktail parties. But no, honestly, I think I have to say a business development career, and I'll kind of leave it at that portion of my career, is an outstanding career, and it's a great stepping stone if it's the first step that you're taking, and I think proposal managers and proposal professionals in general really get to see everything an organization does. They as they go through it, they learn all the things that an organization might sell or services that it might provide, and it opens you up to a lot more opportunities. You know, if you find that there's one of the things that your company delivers is something you're incredibly passionate about, well, you can slide in that direction, you know. And if it's that you want to get more involved with delivering things to the client and being on the front end and the capture side of things, then it's a great way to get into there. So I think it's a great way to get to know what an organization does, and you know, it's a great career path. You know, if it's something that you want to do for the rest of your life, you know, people have had phenomenal livings, you know, as many of our APMP members can attest to. And if it's something that you want to do for a short time, the experience you gain will carry with you forever. So I think it's a great career path.
Oh, absolutely. And I think everyone listening couldn't agree more.
And they probably agree with don't follow my career path because it's just
Oh yeah, I think we've all had some pretty interesting career paths. So my final question for you is, what's next for you? What are you looking forward to in the future?
I'm looking forward to seeing Kristen's year as chair of APMP. You know, I think she's got some really exciting things that she's doing now and trying to make this an intentional career path. So I'm really looking forward to that. You know, beyond that, I don't know. I'm excited to see where the alumni role goes. You know, we've been making some kind of incremental changes and trying to make that program more exciting. And then we got hit with this COVID crisis. And frankly, that's a role that was very much so an in-person, you know, kind of networking type role. And, you know, I haven't been anywhere since March, I think it was March 4th in Charlotte was our last in-person event. So it's seeing where that goes and how we can kind of transform that is pretty exciting. And then I think one of the challenges coming off of this year as the chair of APMP amidst this crisis is like not having this much stuff to worry about next year, you know, and that's kind of almost feeling like a void before it's even a void. Is like, wow, I don't know what I'm going to do next year when I have to not think about and not worry about all of the things to keep the association moving forward amidst this pandemic. So we'll see what fills that void. But you know, I'm really looking forward to seeing what Kristen does next year and how she kind of takes this and makes this her own.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that making this a career path for college professionals or college individuals is really going to help kind of grow the industry and really help, you know, focus our up and coming.
I totally agree. And really, like, there's quite a few people that are doing it individually, you know, throughout APMP and in different chapters. In the Nor'easters chapter and the NCA chapter, the UK chapter has their, I think, a mentor program, kind of or apprenticeship program. The Lone Star chapter, there's a lot of individual pockets of people doing things that are kind of in that vein of getting, you know, the word out to folks that are in college and hey, this career path is a pretty good one if you want to roll down that path. And I think, you know, Kristen's vision and bringing all of those folks together and bringing this, you know, some kind of coordination at a global level is really going to be phenomenal.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So Mike, is there any part of your life or career or anything else you would like to say to the listeners, Mike, before we close?
You know, it's so far it's been a good ride. I'm curious to see what the future brings, you know, but I really love all of the connections I've made through APMP. I've met many people that I never would have had connections with beforehand. I have some of my best friends, you know, and I think I've heard others say this, that, you know, I catch up with people once a year pretty much. And this year is so far the exception, you know, and we see each other, you know, and it's like you were hanging out or a week or a month before. You know, we see each other annually at a conference, and yet we pick up exactly where we left off. It's phenomenal to see everybody, you know, and I think that comes with a deep understanding of what everyone else is going through, you know, because we have shared experiences, both professionally and then at the association. And you know, I do think some of my best friends of my adult life are through APMP. So I'm super thankful of that, and I hope they all know how much I cherish their friendship, because I know we never say it enough. I think it's been an interesting outcome of this pandemic is we're almost in communication more often than we were in years past, because we aren't able to get together. Like I said, one of the kindest people I know, Bruce, is coordinating Zoom calls and stuff with folks that we normally see in person. And, I think we've ended up chatting more this year than in between conferences than we have in years past. So that's something that I think if you're not doing it, definitely do it. Pick up the phone and don't let it wait to be another meeting or another conference that you're meeting up with people. Pick up the phone and have a call or have a Zoom or whatever the case may be. Because why not? Why let it be something that we do once a year? Let's do it year round, and let's keep those conversations flowing.
100%, Mike. 100%. We are quite blessed with the feedback on this as well. As you rightly said, many people they know each other for a very long time, but having this meant they know them on a much more personal level. So we are quite blessed. Like every week we at least speak to 3 people and on a 90-minute level.
That's pretty solid. That's a great thing that you guys are getting to do, and getting it and bringing to everybody else. I've picked up things about people that I've known for years that I didn't know because of some of these random questions you're asking on these rapid fire parts that we're definitely not prepared for. So no, that's phenomenal. And I guess the last thing I'll say is make sure that if you haven't register for the Winning Business virtual experience. It's going to be a great time. If you happen to be listening to this and don't know what APMP is, register for APMP, and then you get into the Winning Business virtual experience for the complimentary ticket, and it's registering for APMPs, I think $19 or $20 cheaper than the non-member ticket. So the incentive's there, sign up. It's going to be great. And, we're going to continue to do as much as we can for the membership for the rest of this year. We're always looking for new ways to bring things to the members. And, that's the one thing that I think is phenomenal about the international board and Rick and the staff at APMP is that, everybody is 100% focused on driving value to the members. There's no one who's in it for themselves. There's no one in it for the glory, or the attention. They're just in it to provide as much value as we can to our membership. And we're just going to keep doing that. And I hope people register and sign up.
Definitely, Mike. Definitely. We'll keep sharing the message out loud as well, Mike. So thank you so much for your time today, Mike. It's really been a privilege to have you with us at Scribble Talk. So wish you all the good health and happiness, and everybody around you. Inspire them. Stay healthy, stay happy, and look after yourself, Mike.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. It's been great chatting with both you, Bhaskar, and Ashley. It's it was something I was a little nervous about because I wasn't sure what some of these crazy rapid fire questions were going to be like, but this has been an awful lot of fun, and I hope both of you are able to stay healthy and sane and wear a mask and stay 6 feet apart from everybody else so we can get through this thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Mike.
Look after yourself, Mike. Take care. Bye.
All right, bye.
To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Please visit batchyscribble.com/podcast to listen to this episode and check out any of our other previously recorded episodes. If you've enjoyed today's interview, don't forget to subscribe, review, and share the Scribble Talk podcast. We hope you'll check out our next episode where we interview another industry expert and special guest. Until then, it's Ashley Kays,
Bhaskar Sundram,
signing off.